I think
305.
go live. Yes.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, a very good afternoon, one and all, as we reconvene this 7th meeting of the Joint Select Committee of the Parliament of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago on National Security. I would like to welcome all of you present in this virtual space, and as well the viewing and listening audience. This meeting is being broadcast live on the Parliament's Channel 11 and Radio 105 FM, and the Parliament's YouTube channel, ParlView. We welcome officials representing the Ministry of National Security and the Commissioner of Prisons. Let me, in the formality and for the record, introduce myself. I am Fitzgerald Ethelbert Hines, Chairman of this Joint Select Committee on National Security. And I would now invite my colleagues to introduce themselves for similar reasons, starting with Senator De Freitas.
Good afternoon again. Thank you, Mr. Chair. The name is Nigel De Freitas, member.
Good afternoon, everyone. Paul Richards, Vice Chairman of the committee.
Good afternoon. Jayanti Lakshmidial, member of the committee.
Good afternoon, everyone. Keith Scotland, member of the committee.
Good afternoon, Rudal Munilal, member of the committee.
And just for the record, thank you all very, very much. Just for the record, we have other members who are not with us at this time, but we can proceed us being quorate. I would like to introduce as well our support team, our secretariat to this committee, led by the Clerk of the House and the Clerk of the Senate, Madam Jackie Sampson Miguel and Mr. Brian Caesar, respectively, and of course, Renee Batson and others who represent the secretariat and support team to this committee. May I now ask, beginning with the Ministry of National Security officials, that you introduce yourselves for the benefit of the committee, the viewers and listeners, and for the record. Please.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Gary Joseph, Acting Permanent Secretary at the Ministry of National Security. And I have here with me the Acting Deputy Permanent Secretary, Ms. George Thomas.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Walter Alexander, the Research Specialist of the Penal Reform and Transformation Unit, Ministry of National Security.
Thank you very much. And now we move to the Prison Service.
Good afternoon, Chair. My name is Dennis Pulchan, Acting Commissioner of Prisons.
Thank
you. Chair. Good afternoon, members. Good afternoon, Trinidad and Tobago. My name is Sherwin Bruce, Deputy Commissioner of Prisons Administration. Good day, Chair and other members. Don Monroe, Prison Officer 2, Research.
Thank you all very, very much. We are more than happy to have you before us. Let me indicate that the purpose of this meeting is to explore the methods that we have employed to combat organized crime, thereby circumventing its impact on the vulnerable youth of our society. The objectives of this inquiry largely include to understand the specific measures implemented to identify vulnerable youth and intervene prior to their possible gang recruitment. Secondly, to investigate progress made towards the transformation of the prisons and community residences from a punitive model to a rehabilitative model in terms of the dispensation of justice as a philosophy of justice in Trinidad and Tobago, a project that was instituted as far back as 2001, when the cabinet, getting a report from a particular committee that looked in the matter, adopted and accepted its recommendation that we transform from a retributive penal system to one of restorative and rehabilitative justice. And of course, the third objective in the main of this committee is to assess the continuum of service options intended to ensure the reintegration of persons who found themselves in conflict with the law and to have them successfully re-enter the society after their sentences. That broadly, or those broadly, represent the objectives of this inquiry. And I would like, as we proceed, to advise all participants of the following. Please ensure that all forms of communication are either silenced or completely taken off to ensure that they do not get in the way of these deliberations. You are also encouraged, as far as is practicable, to look into your camera as you speak, and that is for obvious reasons. When you are not actually holding the floor, you should mute your mic so as to prevent background feedback, which will adversely affect the broadcast. Avoid unnecessary noises when in fact your mic is unmuted. And please use the raised hand application on your system to indicate to me, the chairman, that you would like to make an intervention. So with those few house rules well and truly behind us, I would like to commence this interrogating experience with the objectives of the work of this committee, as I have just outlined them, firmly in mind, so that you, our guests, can provide us as a joint select committee with the information we seek as we advance to the goal as I have described it. I would therefore like to invite Senator Paul Richards to begin his turn of questions to those of you who are before us. Senator Richards.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, everyone, once again. Thank you to the entities for being with us today. I will start with the officials of the Ministry of National Security. In the 11th Parliament, the SSA came before the committee, identified Trinidad and Tobago as having just over 2,000 gangs, with an average of 20 members. Recently, the Commissioner of Police and his deputies came before us and indicated that Trinidad and Tobago now has, according to his information, 134 gangs with a total of 1,056 members. The Commissioner also went on to identify some of the names of the gangs existing at this time in Trinidad and Tobago. With that information would suggest we had a significant reduction in the number of gangs in the country and subsequently gang members. Could you give us a sense from your information at the Ministry of National Security if the Commissioner's information of 134 gangs and an average of 1,056 gang members coincides with the information that you have at the Ministry of National Security?
Thank you, Mr. Richards. At this point in time, I don't have that information before me. That information, as you indicated, would have been provided by the TTPS. I am not sure whether or not prison service might be in a position to corroborate any of that, but at this point in time, I don't have, I can't verify or validate that information.
Would you be able to supply that information in writing from, in addition to the TTPS and prisons, other agencies of law enforcement and national security?
We will undertake to validate that information.
And if you could, because the information we had 4 years ago came from the SSA. All right, second question. Would you be able to provide information as to whether there have been any changes in gang types, modus operandi, dynamics, gang movement, and gang operations in Trinidad and Tobago? If you have found in your data collection and intelligence, if there have been any significant changes in the operations, MO, and dynamics of gangs and types of gangs operating in Trinidad and Tobago?
Again, we will seek to provide that information to you in writing. I know the Commissioner is on the other end there. Perhaps when you reach it to him, he might be able to provide further insights.
Well, the Commissioner is the Commissioner of Prisons, so his remit is on prisons. I don't know that he has information in the wider sphere as to gangs, but if he does, I'm sure he will. All right, but let me rephrase the question then. From where you sit and the intelligence and data that you have, give us a sense of what you think is the lay of the land as far as gang activities in Trinidad and Tobago in a general sense.
That, from where I sit, certain information may not be passed directly to me, but there would be that interaction with, let's say, the Commissioner and the Minister. I have not been provided with that information, but I am not saying that the information hasn't been passed to the Ministry. It's just that from the Commissioner, there's not a direct reporting relationship to the Permanent Secretary. Minister would usually interface with the Commissioner directly. But at this point in time, that information has not been submitted directly to the Permanent Secretary.
Thank you. I want to move to the, thank you, sir. Mr. Pulchan and his associates with the Prison Association, the prisons of Trinidad and Tobago. We have information before us that 60% of the young individuals entering the prison system will be inducted into a gang. These gangs operate within the prison system as well as the wider society. Would Mr. Pulchan care to expand on that information? Where did that information come from? What was the source of information? What was the methodology in arriving at that sort of information?
Okay, good afternoon, sir. Let me say that I would like to start by saying in the prison service, 65% of the prison population are remanded inmates. So what is happening? We do have about 17 gangs identified in the prisons and they are operating. However, what is happening when an individual is arrested from a gang on the outside, they come into the prison and gravitate towards remnants of the gang within the prison. So it's not joining a gang, it is rejoining people who they are familiar with. We were able to identify positively 17 gangs operating in the remand sphere.
17 gangs. Would you have a sense of how many inmates that translates into?
That I would say pretty close to about pretty close to about 200 inmates max. Not everybody in the remand are gang associated. But the time spent in remand and the dependency on family members slowly decline. We have inmates in the remand 10 years, 11 years awaiting their matters, and they tend to gravitate to those persons of influence who can do something for them. And because of this need and this vacuum created, people gravitate towards gangs. So I would say about 200 right now, 200 members may be involved in gang. Not everyone in the remand, sir.
Now, the larger prison population is how much? The last count I had was just about 3,999. What's your count as to the overall prison population?
3,750 as of today.
3,750. And out of that, you say the remand is 1,861. Is that correct?
That could be correct, sir.
All right. So of the wider population not on remand, those who have had convictions, would those also have been part of the 200 you identified as being involved in gangs within prison walls?
No, sir. I think the majority of people who are involved in gang will be the remanded inmates. The convicted inmates are scattered throughout 9 prisons, and they are engaged in productive work and programs, so they don't really have the time to be involved in gang and gang membership.
Now, in terms of the 200 or so inmates that would have been realigned with gangs, the 17 or so gangs that you identified, are they doing so for protection within prison walls, for favors, etc.? What would be the main reasons that they realign with gangs inside of prison walls?
There are several reasons. And one of the major reasons I see coming up is survival. Survival in the sense that there are gang members, gang heads who can provide them with visit bags, have them running errands, being useful, being wanted, being needed. These are some of the elements that led to gang recruitment within the prison.
There's also a question about whether or not these remanded individuals or convicted individuals who may realign themselves with gang activity while within prison walls, whether or not when they come out, because you're saying realignment with gangs when they enter the prison walls, which suggests that they were gang members before they were remanded. Would that be correct?
That would be correct, sir.
So would it be that because they're remanded, they don't get a chance to go through a lot of rehabilitative programs? And would your information provide that when they come out, do they stay in gangs or do they try to come out of the gangs?
So what I can tell you, so far we have started placing programs for remanded inmates. The status of a remanded inmate is that the person is innocent until proven guilty. So the start a rehabilitation program immediately means that I must accept my crime, and that will always happen. So what we have started doing in the prison service is having educational program, anger management program that will have behavior modification attached to it. So we see a change in behavior with most of the young men incarcerated for a length of time. To follow up on their exit, really the prison don't have that authority. When an inmate leave the walls of the prison service is not in a position to follow and see what happens with that individual life.
So there's no information as to whether they stay with gangs when they come out or they rejoin gangs. Now, you spoke about the prison's my final question before I pass on to one of my colleagues about the rehabilitative program, restorative justice programs while inside prison walls. Do you think it is going to be a successful, given we know the conditions of remand and prisons officers also have to endure these really squalid conditions. So one, I'm incarcerated on remand for, in some instances, 5 years or less, 606 inmates, 6 to 10 years, 289, 11 to 15, 161, and some as much as 16 to 20 years, awaiting trial. And under those conditions, and how effective can those programs be under those squalid remand conditions, even though they may be quite good programs?
Just a hold. Before I pass on to my deputy to answer that question with respect to programs, let me just add at this point in time, the government recently spent $53 million to refurbish the southern area of the remand prison, where we are trying to modernize that area and make it more humane for inmates. This was a plan for a long while now, and the government has taken this initiative. So the conditions in the remand are improving vastly as we speak.
That's Golden Grove you're talking about?
That's Golden Grove remand, sir.
What Port of Spain has remanded prisoners also?
Port of Spain have remanded prisoners, and a lot has been done in Port of Spain as well.
Okay. So the conditions have
The conditions are slowly evolving, sir. We have come a long way from the dungeon days.
I was there 4 years ago, and it didn't seem so far from the dungeon days to me. Don't answer that. Mr. Chairman, over to you.
Yes, sir. So with respect to programs, I'm going to let my deputy answer that program question, sir.
Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Programming continues to be the mainstay for Trinidad and Tobago Prison Service going forward. Program initially started with the convicted inmates because, as the commissioner would have said, they are the ones who would have been found guilty, and therefore they would have taken some ownership towards their matter. Our issue with the remand is that they're innocent until proven guilty. Yet we continue to engage them throughout time, not only in educational but social skills development, and also we have allowed these same inmates to get involved with music programs and also assisting on programs external to the institution. This was before the pre-COVID experience.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Richards. Before I go on to Mr. De Freitas, I would like to ask Commissioner, you said that some of them get involved in the gang on the basis of need. And you said that largely had to do with survival. What do you mean by that?
Okay, sir. What I mean by that, an inmate may have remanded inmate may have a particular need to have visits from his family on a regular basis. Some of these are not forthcoming as usually is. When an inmate get a visit from his family, they normally give him a visit bag with some stuff that will last him for a period of time. Those who can't afford to come and visit their relatives in the prison, right? These are the vulnerable inmates who are prone to be captured in that niche of needs, and some gang members ensure that they do get that visit bag especially. So they are provided with basic amenities like a soft drink, a biscuit, bar soap, stuff like that. That from the canteen. In which case,
so let me ask, in light of that knowledge, as a bit of a spark plug for gang activity, doesn't the prison service have a responsibility to provide for the needs of the inmate? I'm not talking about five-star luxury desires, but certainly reasonable satisfaction of his needs once he's incarcerated. And in light of that knowledge, why does not the prison service actually do that?
So, as you will no doubt understand that we too have our little constraints with respect to reducing budgets, and we go as far as to stretch our items to the remand as far as practical. We too are facing budget constraints, That is one of the reasons why some of this situation is as it is.
So finally, a visit bag, as you described it, that thing that causes him, on the basis of his need for survival, to cleave to a gang. What does the visit bag consist of?
Okay, sure. A visit bag consists of a soft drink, a sweet bread, a soft drink,
yeah,
a sweet bread, perhaps some biscuits, snacks, generally snacks, preserved mango, a pack of nuts.
So am I to take it, therefore, would it be safe to say that for some preserved mangoes, some nuts, and a sweet drink, a man can become a member of a gang?
This is what is happening, sir.
Okay, this helps me in understanding. I understand the little things that might be ordinary to us out here mean a lot to inmates. And prices are a lot higher inside of the prison for those reasons. Scarcity of supply. Am I correct?
You are absolutely correct, sir.
All right, Senator De Freitas, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So let me just continue the line of questioning to the Commissioner of Prisons, the Acting Commissioner of Prisons. So you indicated that out of the 1,861 individuals on remand, there were about 200 people spread across 17 gangs. Let me ask this question. The 17 gangs, do they mimic the gangs that are on the outside?
Senator De Freitas, they certainly do. They certainly do. Most of the activities that happen on the outside with gangs, sort of, they attempt to try that in the prison. Sometimes they are successful, sometimes we caught on with them and stop it.
Okay, so this is where it becomes important in terms of information. So you said, and I thought I heard you in a response to Senator Richards, that the prisons are not capable of sort of following these individuals after. So this is, their case has been tried and they've been released and whatnot. So you're not really following them after. What type of connectivity in relation to information does the prisons have with the TTPS? Because to me, if it's a smaller population in the prisons, obviously, and you know that there's 17 gangs in there and they're mimicking the gangs outside. If an individual is on remand and they're part of a gang, is this information passed to the TTPS so that they can pick up in terms of that individual and their activities?
So the Trinidad and Tobago Prison Service operates in the whole of government approach, and information are shared in all the required departments of the Ministry of National Security.
Okay. So then, is it safe to say that individuals leaving the remand system are continuing gang activity on the outside? Now, mind you, when they came in, they may not be 100% active in relation to the gangs, but because of an increased need for survival, and we just heard what that meant, that once they leave the system, which is remand, that they sort of have more of a stake in the gang activity when they leave. In your opinion, you can't follow them, obviously, because it's beyond your remit. But in your mind, based on what occurs within the prison system, do you believe that when they leave, they are continuing to engage in that gang activity?
It is my belief, that, my opinion, that most of them do not. I think some of them go back to the life that they live, because that need will now, that void that was created while they were incarcerated, no longer there. So they have more opportunities for themselves. So I do not believe that they may go back to their gangs.
So, given how gangs tend to work, and because it's a close-knit or tight unit, some would believe that the gang activity inside of the prison is connected to the gang activity outside. So we've heard over the years, gang leaders or gang members being able to, contact individuals on the outside to get certain things done for the furtherance of gang activity. But your opinion is stating that they sort of leave that life after. But in my mind, if a gang is such a tight-knit unit, how is it possible that in the prison system for survival, you join the gang and then you leave? It's as if, you know, the other gang members on the outside, because there's a gang inside, same gang outside, that they are not going to try to keep them in terms of the gang activity that is going on. How is that possible that they are able to leave, but individuals who are on the outside and have never been remanded can't leave?
Let me say, sir, again, I'd just like to repeat, it is my opinion that some of them leave while others may follow. But not all of them who leave the prison gravitate towards gang on the outside.
Okay. And the final question that I have, what is, do you see individuals who are on remand and for one reason or the other are released actually coming back into the prison system by way of remand, not recidivism, because that speaks to criminals who spend their time, they've been convicted, they spend their time, and they're coming back because they've committed another activity. I'm talking more a situation where an individual is on remand, they've not been convicted, they've gone back into their life, but then they find themselves back on remand for some other thing. How many instances of that are you seeing, especially related to the individuals who are sort of within that gang system in the prisons?
So I have seen quite a number of them who would have been brought in for, let's assume, firearm. And in 2 weeks or 1 week, they get their bail, go back out there, commit another offense, and return to prison as a remanded inmate. We have inmates here who may have 5 and 6 different warrants and who have been given bail several occasions.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Senator. Member Jayanti Lakshmidial.
Thank you, Chairman. Commissioner, it's been reported, and it's also some anecdotal evidence, but we've seen reports where some of your officers have been found smuggling contraband into the prisons. Now, I know you spoke about the visiting bags and so on, but what about the issue of contraband? Would you say that this is facilitating and promoting, to an extent, the development of gangs within the prison, and how have you tackled that issue?
Senator, I think you're absolutely correct. We do have a problem with contraband in the prison. We have some unscrupulous officers. About 6 between last year and this year have been arrested and charged and gone before a court. So naturally, we have our systems in place to catch them. We are working with other law enforcement agencies to weed these miscreants out of our system. And they do slip through the cracks and contraband enter the prison. That in itself causes serious problems within the prison community and against officers. Last year, I buried an officer who died because he took away a cell phone that was trafficked and come into the prison. He took away a cell phone from an inmate, and a shot was called on him. And that cell phone may have come into the system by an officer. So trafficking is a scourge in my eyes, and we are trying desperately to stamp it out and have these people convicted.
Do you think that the mechanisms you have in place right now for scanning persons who visit, or for scanning your own officers when they enter the prison, for what we I think the term that was used back in the day, I know, was vaulting, who traffic these things into the prison? Do you think you have sufficient systems for scanning and for surveillance at the moment, or do you think that there's room to develop those systems for better detection of contraband entering the prisons?
Ma'am, with the size of phone today, I think vaulting might be out. But,
yeah.
I just want to say that we have electronic scanning. We have X-ray scanning where you can see through the clothing a person wears to see if anything is secreted in the person's garments, and we do that. We do check if we have to rub down anybody. We can do that also. but stringent measures on vehicles and anyone entering our prisons is practiced right now. More so with the advent of COVID in the system, much more care is taken. So we are, and let me tell you something, 6 of the cases I mentioned recently where we arrested officers was as a result of scanning at our gates.
The scanning, is it implemented at all prisons, but remand as well as the regular prisons and at Port of Spain and Aruca?
Yes, ma'am. All 9 prisons have scanners installed in them, and that is what we use. Every single person entering our prison must be scanned and vehicles checked minutely. And it doesn't end there. An officer can be called upon anytime in the prison, and he must subject himself according to law to be searched.
What about the cell phone jammers and grabbers that would allow for signals to be blocked in the event that if a phone does get into the system and slips through the cracks? Are they up and running? Are they working properly?
Ma'am, the agency responsible for that could comment on that, but I can't.
And that would be the SSA?
That's right.
Okay, no problem. Could you also say, in terms of rehabilitation then, let's move on from the gang facilitation, but to rehabilitate or to work with, even, as you said, it's a bigger problem on remand, in terms of rolling out educational type programs and so on. Do you think a sufficient level of participation from NGOs and religious groups and so on? Is there a program, is there structure to incorporate entities such as these into your system so that they can work with the inmates, especially those on remand who enjoy the presumption of innocence, as you said?
With your permission, ma'am, I would like to allow my deputy, Mr. Bruce, to answer this question.
Sure.
Hi, good afternoon, ma'am.
Afternoon.
We have had a great input from the NGOs and the CBOs, the church-based organizations, and also the non-governmental. These entities, they have been part and parcel because the remanded inmates, their participation in these programs are voluntary. When persons from the outside donate their support to the institution, the inmates gravitate towards those programs, and their behavior, there is some behavior change as they go forward in these programs. So we've had the religious programs going forward, we've had the academic, we've had peace education, we've had various programs to deal with issues that deals with the criminogenic needs of the inmates. We even have the remanded inmates take part in our radio station. I know the radio station has been there with us for quite some time, Rise Maximum Radio. They have been there, and we are able to run programs with NGOs through the Rise Maximum Radio. That way we can reach a greater portion of our population.
Commissioner and team, has COVID negatively impacted the participation of the NGOs and the church-based organizations with respect to delivering these types of programs, and what has been the impact, if you've seen any, on the prison population?
Fair enough. Based on COVID, the entries of civilians into the institution ceased. But what that left for us is new opportunities to do things differently. We have engaged religious-based organizations to run their programs via the same medium, so they would deal with the criminogenic needs within their services, and also the academic. And I must thank YTEP just for bringing one organization who would have run a skills learning program alongside with the officers, the prison officers, towards teaching inmates skill development.
Let me just add something. To add what Deputy is saying, madam, let me also say that from today, with effect from today, and must happen today, was Vision of a Mission first online program for the year. And this has to do with re-entry into society and preparing inmates who term of imprisonment has come to an end to prepare them for re-entry into society.
Okay, so that's something that started today. All right, I just have one question. Well, I guess we would have to wait to hear how effective those things are as they're being rolled out. But I have one question for the PRTU, which is Ministry of National Security. The unit, having been established in 2007, is there a strategic plan in place at the moment for that unit? And can you tell us about it, a little bit about the strategic plan, if there is one?
At the moment, there isn't a strategic plan for the unit, but the unit is under the Ministry of National Security. So we're piggybacking on the Ministry of National Security's strategic plan. But we have plans and programs that we would have done over the years. And we would have started a number of programs, and presently we have lending support to the prisons. So for example, we've been given the prisons support in terms of a cosmetic program for the female inmates. Also, we have in plan a gym for the female inmates as well. So the idea behind that is twofold. Also in terms of the physical capacity to mental health and physical health well-being of the inmates, as well as give them a skill. So apart from them having the physical activity, they would also be able to, we would have physical training, people would be doing physical training exercises, and when they leave prison, they'll be able to be physical training instructors. So those are some of the things that the unit has been doing over the years, and also we've been lending a lot of support to the provision of computers to help in the education of inmates.
Okay, I mean, do you have any sort of system in place to measure the effectiveness of these initiatives that we've mentioned?
Yeah, we have some reports where the prisons as well as ourselves would be doing reports annually.
And how would you say, how effective would you say that these measures have been since you've been reporting and measuring? And would you be able to share some of the data with us as opposed to, with respect to the effectiveness of the measures?
We would commit to sharing the reports with you. But in terms of effectiveness, when you see the reports, you'll see how effective the programs were.
All right, great. Thank you very, very much. Let me invite Member Scotland to put some questions to you, National Security and Prisons. Mr. Scotland.
National Security, good afternoon. Prisons, good afternoon. In 2010, our then Minister of National Security, Brigadier John Sandy, did a report that says from 2009 to 10, there was an escalation in youth crime that moved from 860 to 933, and those figures increased over the last 5 years from 2010. Do you have figures as it relates to the escalation or the de-escalation of crime as it relates to young persons in our society? Chair, did I take off my mic?
No, I'll respond, Mr. Scotland. We will seek to get that information to you, sir.
Okay. Chair, that is something that we would need to show a trend.
Yeah.
I move on. As it relates to the prison, can the Commissioner of Prisons tell this committee, and by extension, the national community, has there been any gang warfare within the prison system?
No, sir. I can categorically state there is no gang warfare. There are individuals with difference of opinions and different interaction, and sometimes there's conflict. But to say one gang versus the other don't exist in the prison.
I just want to say, and I will Chair, I will not engage the commissioner at this stage, but I will put something in writing. Commissioner, you know that there are matters that are, as we speak, in a certain place. I will move on and ask another question. As it relates, and this is both for national security and for the prison, as it relates to the youth, there are instances in Jamaica and in New Zealand where a restorative approach to youth, which involves a non-adversarial approach to youth delinquency and youth offense. Has the prison, has the Ministry of National Security embraced that approach that has been existing since 1989 in New Zealand and has been copied to some extent in Jamaica?
The short answer for that, Mr. Scotland, the short answer is yes. Our look at youth justice and restorative justice not only goes within our space at the Youth Training and Rehabilitation Center, both male and female, but also in our proactive approach with our prison youth clubs. We have throughout Trinidad and Tobago a total of 12 youth clubs, 4 in Tobago and 8 in Trinidad and Tobago and in Trinidad. This has been our approach not only in the remedial action, but also in our proactive action towards dealing with the issue of crime and youth justice.
Because you would agree with me and you can disagree that if we do that, that will stymie or that will decrease the amount of youth that are attracted to gang activity, correct?
Yes, sir, we would agree with you, sir.
I want to ask the prisons, have the prisons in a restorative justice construct employed any of the restorative justice practices, such as victim offender mediation? You spoke about gangs or people being lured, and the chairman asked, well, wouldn't it be part of your process of decreasing that if you could provide certain of the services? You said it's a matter of resources, but what about family community conferences or victim offender reporting programs? Have you, in other words, at the prisons, implemented any restorative justice practice as part of your modus operandi?
Yes, sir, we have.
Which one?
We have looked at the family mediation. One of the reasons why I was alluded to by the commissioner earlier is that family support system, which is usually measured by the inmate in terms of visit bag. But the core, the underneath and foundation of that is the family support system. Through our prison welfare officers, our social workers within the system, they have engaged in family mediation for quite some time, ensuring that that bond with the family and the inmate stays strong, and where possible, repair. Because we have seen, not only by data in Trinidad and Tobago, but throughout the world, is that someone with a strong family support system would less likely become involved in crime, because it's not only about them now, but about the whole familial system going forward. So we have looked at that. We have also opened ourselves up to victim offender mediation, but you'll be quite aware that because of where we are placed in the National Security Network, our interaction with victims has been limited, and we would have to partner. We would have had inmates who would have written letters to the court making that plea for victim offender mediation, and we have encouraged that, and we have done the victim awareness programs in our orientation program, and also through Rise Maximum Radio, making each inmate be aware.
You know that our venerable chairman, as he is now, before was an honorable minister of national security. And in an interview in 2014 in a paper done by Melissa Doughty, chairman, I don't know if you remember that, but you indicated, Chairman, I want Ministry of National Security to address us, that little progress was made in restorative justice as a model, and instead there was a backward step which has set back the system some 10 to 15 years. What has the Ministry of National Security Permanent Secretary done to try to turn that tide and to progress restorative justice?
Mr. Scotland, I'll ask the Penal Reform Transformation Unit to respond, please.
Thank you kindly.
Thank you very much, Mr. Scotland. The Penal Reform and Transformation Unit over the years has been trying to implement the restorative justice model, and our client is the prison service, and most of our programs are directed to the prison service. In the new dispensation after this year, after COVID, we'll try to expand the program to the schools and the wider society. But for the moment, most of our interest is with the prison service, and most of our resources go to the prison service to deal with this.
Chairman, I have one more question. When are we going to get the up-to-date statistics as it relates to juvenile delinquency and the trend, whether it is upwards or downward?
It's unmuted. Yes. We will seek to get to you within, let's say, a week, Mr. Scotland.
Chairman, I'm in your hands. I'm very grateful for the answers to the question. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Scotland. PS National Security.
Yes, sir.
I have noticed that perhaps 9.5 out of 10 times, if I may use the metaphor, you were unable to immediately provide information to this committee in respect of the questions directed to you. I know that you would have been briefed as to the purpose, the objectives of this inquiry, and one would have thought that you might have had some of this material easily and on hand available. Is it that you are taking the position that you are the administrative arm of national security and these matters are not immediately within your purview?
You should not take that stand. We will seek to provide as much assistance as possible to those organizations under our purview, but they have to drive the work that is being undertaken. But we will certainly provide all the necessary support that is required to ensure that they meet their mandate. So we are continuously working in this case with the prison service. The PRTU is available. We will have our engagements with them as it relates to various projects. So we are there to provide the support, but on the ground, the prison service will need to do what they need to do. But it's not only from an administrative aspect. Their focus will be on the operational, but in terms of the support at the level of the ministry, we are there to provide all the support necessary, including whether or not it's changes in policy, infrastructural support, funding. We will provide that support, but it has to be driven at an operational level.
Chairman, if I could, PS, could you then advise, because the chairman has indicated there are several questions that were asked by the committee members asking for data that even if the prisons and the TT police service are driving the operation, certainly there is data coming back to the Ministry of National Security that you can use to determine if the policy is working, if it's being administered effectively. And that's why we're asking for the data. Is that data available to you, made available to you when the policies and the support is given so that you can ascertain what progress is being made? You can monitor progress and performance. Is that absent?
Well, that again, we would have a monitoring and evaluation unit that would liaise with those bodies outside there in terms of their plans and the information that's provided to continuously evaluate what is being done outside here. But in the instance when you all asked me whether or not I had it within my possession or the information that related to gangs and the numbers and delinquency and so, that information, as I indicated, the situation you all spoke of was with the Commissioner of Police. And as I indicated, the Commissioner does not report directly to the PS. However, that information may have been provided to the Minister of National Security.
All right.
So the Permanent Secretary, in this case myself, I would not have had sight of that information. But
all right,
nevertheless, sorry.
Yes. All right, we get the drift. We get the drift. And but we look forward to the data as you have. We look forward to that.
Okay.
And you'll of course be so reminded post this meeting. Let me invite Dr. Munilal, Member Munilal, to engage on this on behalf of.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I have a couple of questions to both the officials of the Ministry of National Security and the prisons. And good afternoon, gentlemen and lady. I will just follow up very briefly on that issue because I had a note to raise it in my own on my desk. I was concerned, Mr. Permanent Secretary, I was concerned with the response early, which suggested that the ministry was really an administrative entity. But this Ministry of National Security, and in the context of our reality, is not just administrative. It is one of the most critical policy making institutions in the country. It is also a coordinating ministry because of the work the ministry does in relation to law enforcement across the board. So when you add policy and coordination, it is critical. I was taken aback that Permanent Secretary said to us that he did not have sight and did not have an understanding of the current incident of gang membership in this country vis-a-vis members and the number of gangs. I find that a bit difficult because you are heading the coordinating and policy-making institution. The National Security Ministry takes notes to the cabinet, which depend on their advice to pass policy. So I was concerned with that. Is it my first question, therefore, to the minister, to the ministry? Is it that the Minister of National Security is the repository of all information on gangs and gang membership and gang culture and so on, but not the ministry? Because there's also a significant research department in that ministry that should have access to that type of information. That's my first question. My second question is that some time ago, in an earlier interrogation, in an earlier examination, the ministry had indicated that there were programs that they were developing to look at the groups at risk and communities and so on. I don't want to identify all the programs, but they included police youth club, cadet force, school visits, juvenile court, street talk, etc. I wanted the ministry team to give us some update on where we are with these programs. Are they functioning? Are they properly resourced? Is there any problem with human and material resources and so on? And two quick issues that straddle both national security and prison I would raise is that one of the intentions of many years ago of introducing this issue of electronic monitoring bracelet was that persons who are in remand or who are subject to conditions of bail may be allowed to be outside the prison facilities and so on because of the nature of the offense, because they may deem to be persons not, not prone to violence and so on. I wanted to get an update on where we are with the introduction of this much awaited electronic monitoring program, monitoring devices, because that would help to reduce some of the numbers of persons in remand who may be susceptible to gang membership. Because as you said earlier, the Commissioner of Prison, I believe, that persons are, there, they have low self-esteem, low confidence. They may have not committed, very violent criminal, offenses, but they are there, and because they are side by side with what could be seasoned criminals and gang members who are also on remand, they are indoctrinated because of the problems you raise. So that electronic monitoring bracelet matter is a critical matter I wanted an update on. And the final matter to national security is that surely, Mr. Permanent Secretary, you have been following some of the news, and I wanted to get from you a couple bits of information because it concerns national security and the ministry alone. Could you indicate to us a timetable, which surely you must know, a timetable for the repair of the 800 CCTV cameras that are deemed to be not functioning, because many of those cameras are in some of the communities that are high risk, where you have youth violence, delinquency, youth crime. And Mr. Permanent Secretary, it is the understanding in the public domain that a Canadian company by the name of Johnson Controls received a contract in January 2020. Could you just indicate for the record, what was the process? Was it open competitive bidding? And what was the outcome and the cost of that project? And more importantly, when would that project be implemented so that we can have a proper CCTV monitoring of the youth at risk in their respective communities? Thank you very much.
PS, permit me, PS, National Security. PS?
Yes, sir, I'm here.
The last question posed by Member Munilal is obviously a very detailed question that is intended to reveal accurate facts and details. In fairness to the work of this committee and in the public interest, if you are not possessed of the actual facts and details, we will appreciate that in writing. If you have the exact facts and details, you could probably venture a précis now. But of course, if you don't, it would be welcomed by this committee if we would receive that in writing. In addition to that, I understood you before you answer as saying, while you admitted that you did not have some of the data and some of the answers immediately in front of you, I understood you, and if I'm wrong, before you proceed, you must correct me, as saying in one particular matter, the Commissioner of Police would have interfaced with the minister alone. But I understood you to have said, in all the other matters, these bits of information would be coming to the Ministry of National Security, at least the Monitoring and Evaluation Department. In those circumstances, you might proceed to answer some of the matters raised by Member Munilal.
Thank you, Chair. Like I would have indicated earlier, because the Commissioner of Police is the accounting officer, there is no direct reporting relationship in terms of what transpires in his organization. But there certainly would be the sharing of information as it relates to, there might be notes that has to be prepared to take to cabinet to get approval for certain matters.
Understood.
Okay. Mr. Munilal raised the issue of the electronic monitoring bracelets. I would just indicate that we are advanced with this project. We are about to undertake some testing in Tobago. Procedures and so have been developed with the judiciary, and we are awaiting the assignments hopefully by the end of this month, so that project should be launched in the not too distant future.
Chairman, would that mean that could the PS identify, because I know in the 11th session of Parliament, the judiciary had indicated that a pilot project was due to be started and completed. Was that pilot project with electronic braces started and completed?
No, I don't believe that was started.
Chairman, I could be of some assistance.
Please.
All the infrastructure is in place. It is just a matter now for it to be up and running. Everything is in place, Member Senator Rich.
Well, that's the question. My question is, my question is, the information was that at that time in 2017, or I do believe 2018 at latest, it was due to be rolled out as a pilot project and completed. So that was not done.
No, it wasn't.
Okay, and the question that Dr. Munila asked about the status of the CCTV cameras that are operational or not operational, if the PS has information on that.
Those cameras, TSTT would have had the contract to maintain the system. Right now, they have been repairing cameras, and so at my last check, about 80% of the cameras are up and running, and they continue to do work to ensure that we have a higher percentage of cameras coming online. But
yes,
there was previously, within the last few months, a large number of cameras were down. But within the last 2 months, TSTT has been working to get those cameras back online.
So
that is quite happy news.
Great. Okay.
That is quite happy news for this committee.
And Mr. Permanent Secretary, the matter of the new contract.
Mr. Munilal, just a moment, please. I'm on my legs. P.S. As I was indicating, that is a matter of happy news for us. We are wanting to keep this matter. In fact, I think the Minister of National Security was in the public on that matter before. As I said, you know, we can get the
Chairman, could you allow the Permanent Secretary to answer the questions, please?
Mr. Munilal, I am speaking. Could you just permit me to finish my comment, please? Thank you very much. And I'm saying, Mr. PS, that you can provide details of those matters in writing, and that would be quite satisfactory, as we have always done in this committee. Thank you.
I will do so, Chair.
I thank you very warmly. Now, PS, I would like, Dr. Munilal did raise a number of little matters, well, not little, projects that you had indicated to this committee in your written submission to us, dated the 15th of February 2021. You had listed 10 programs. Dr. Munilal alluded to a couple of them. That you, the Ministry of National Security, operates in order to identify at-risk or vulnerable youth and communities, with a view, as this committee is mandated to do, to look at how those programs and the absence of programs like that impacts on young people, vulnerable people, joining gangs and getting involved in antisocial and criminal lives and behaviors. 10 you listed. In fact, could you remind us what those projects are, those 10, and give us a synopsis as minuscule as you can, bikini as you can, of what each of them does and their impact on steering vulnerable youth away from crime, please.
Thank you, Chair. We would have listed in that document that was sent to you in February. The first one would have been the Trinidad and Tobago Cadet Force. This one is a military structured national youth organization. We have, well, you would appreciate, given the COVID measures in place, that face-to-face interaction would have been constrained. But whilst it was functioning, we were looking at about 69 schools being part of that program, impacting about 1321 cadets, comprised of 879 males and 442 females. So that certainly, it has the potential through this military structured approach to instill that sort of discipline and to bear them away from that particular path.
Thank you very much. The 9 others, community visits by TTPS, what is that? Give us not a long synopsis, give us an idea what that is, how it works, its impact.
Okay, so I would think that on the last occasion, TTPS would have spoken about these, but it's really for the TTPS going into the communities and having that one-on-one sort of conversation with troubled youth within the community. So
school visits by the TTPS, the same thing, but in the school.
That's correct. That's correct.
What about the police youth clubs?
Okay, so again, the police would have been involved in forming these youth clubs where they could come together and they would be involved in different activities, the mentoring and so to get them to display a certain kind of behavior and not fall prey to what might be taking place outside in the community. So it's to keep them within a particular group and provide that nurturing and so environment.
Any idea about how many clubs we have across the country?
I can't say about the number at this point. Sure, if you require, we can seek to get that to you.
Yes, and how many youngsters on average are engaged in these youth clubs and that sort of thing. I see you have as well interest group meetings, police town meetings. So it looks like, the town meetings are different from community visits by the TTPS.
Right.
TTPS street talk, what is that?
Okay, so it's really about going into the community where the youths may be assembled, they may be on the blocks, just lining, and so police go and really meet them in their environment and have the conversations with them.
Yeah, and I see you have interagency task force. That seems to be a fighting unit. How does that impact on vulnerable youth and keeping them out of crime?
Again, Chair, there's the softer side of things. Police must not always seem to be the adversary. And the IATF, working together with the Office of Law Enforcement Policy, would be going out into the communities and having those meetings. And so with them, trying to steer the youth away from the life of crime. So it's the softer side of the police coming out in those instances.
All right, and you must be talking about the Hearts and Minds unit of the IATF.
Yes.
They get involved in the communities in sport and all of those kinds of things.
Yes.
So we would like to get from you, if you have not yet provided them, some of the metrics used to assess whether the program activity is achieving the defined outcomes. We would like to get some statistics on the number of persons, as I asked a while ago, who have participated and are actively engaged in this program since it's in these programs since their inceptions. What mechanisms, and this harks back to the point Senator Richards and Dr. Munilal made, what mechanisms do you have in place to monitor and evaluate the participants? Once a program activity is concluded, what sort of tracer studies you have to see the impact of this and the expenditure that supports these, whether we are getting value for money, and quite apart from expenditure, really whether we are managing to successfully steer the vulnerable youth away from vulnerability and gang activity, gang engagement. And of course, we would also like to know, as you provide those things in writing, what are the main challenges that these programs have faced, and what mitigation strategies are being adopted in the face of those challenges. And finally, we would like to hear some recommendations in respect of areas identified for improvement. Let me turn, I look forward to those. The committee would benefit greatly from them. Let me ask the Commissioner of Prisons, or perhaps Prison Officer 2, Don Monroe. Mr. Monroe, what is your specific responsibility in the context of the prison in this? Why are you with us today?
Well, I deal with research and the interaction with other law enforcement agencies in terms of triangulating and getting information on gangs and other.
Right. Well, then you are in a very wonderful position to tell us, how is gang activity manifest? How does it manifest itself inside of the prison? And secondly, how is it manifest from inside of the prison on the outside? The reason why I asked that, recently I heard that it is not uncommon for persons to spend some time in your facility, remand or otherwise, and they have strategies to earning a whole lot of money while in prison, to the point where when they go out of prison, they have large accumulations of cash. One parent shared that with me as a member of parliament recently, where her son who was inside was raising a tremendous amount of money. Now that requires a level of ingenuity. I mean, I couldn't understand it. So I would like to know, how is gang activity manifest in the prison? If, as Mr. Pulchan said, there is no war, then what is the gang? What is it for? What is its raison d'etre? And how is it affecting life on the outside? I would like Mr. Monroe.
Add it to that, because it's a related question.
Thank you.
If the Prisons Commissioner can answer, what is the main means of communication between inside and outside presently? What the main means of communication?
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. Very useful additive. Mr. Monroe. And team, of course.
Yes, sir. Prisons is a microcosm of what happens in the larger society. And when gang members or people affiliated with gangs come into prison, that's their way of life. So they try to propagate that, you know. And as Commissioner stated earlier, we have the issue of rogue officers who traffic contraband into the prison. This contributes to carrying on that going concern of the business. And we are using all our resources and triangulating with other law enforcement agencies to curb this scourge. As Commissioner said, we interdicted between 6 to 8 prison officers for the year so far, and we have stepped up our actions at the various.
This is why I was asking, how, in the absence of the warring that we saw on the outside, they shoot at each other, they fight for turf, all of those things. They buy and sell guns, they have their Zessa parties, and they have their fancy parties in other fancy parts of the country too. It's not only Zessa parties, they have Western parties, Easter parties, all sorts of parties. So that, how is gang activity manifest in the prison? What is the gang, what do they do in the prison for you to be able to identify them as a gang?
Yeah, trafficking.
Is it that they all sit and eat their visit bag and drink their sweet drink and eat a biscuit together? Is that the extent of it?
Well, it's driven by commerce. It's driven by commerce and you know, their communication and involvement with the outside, trying to, you know, turn over, make a turnover. And they also do a lot of code sharing.
But it's not it cannot be as simple as that. You see, when we are outside here, there's no wall between us and what we want to do. Our liberty is not constrained. We are free to move, free to invest. But if it is correct that they're making more money on the inside than us on the outside, if it is, as I heard the Prison Association complain, that they are in serious fear for their lives because shots are being called from the inside, then it cannot just be a matter of what you have said. Something tragic, something serious is taking place. And this is what I am asking. What is it? How is it? Mr. Pulchan.
So, certainly. So, contraband translates into money. And what is happening, a pack of cigarettes that will normally sell for about $25, $30 in prison, that goes for sometimes about as much as $500. So it's really about making money. There are instances where inmates come in prison, having to work a day in their life, and able to pay their lawyers.
So when the money, so they sell the contraband in the prison for plenty money, and they get the cash in the prison, have it in the cell, and then get it out in a bank, in a credit union, in a box under a bed.
So that matter right now is currently under investigation by a group of seasoned officers, and I really don't want to speak much on it right now, but I can tell you, sir, that we are tracking that daily. Contraband comes in different forms. Even,
I understand.
Even money do not come to the prison, but exchange to the outside.
Have you heard that the phone card business is a very popular one? For example, daddy is called and daddy is told to put $500, $1,000 on my, or $500 on my phone in the jail. If daddy does that on the outside, and it's every 2 days they want a phone card from daddy or mommy. If daddy does that, these calls are now sold to other inmates at very, very high cost per call.
That is another theory, sir.
And the calls are paid for by letting the user of the phone's family outside carry money for my family on the outside. Have you heard that?
Yes, sir. What is known as extortion. And that seems to be the way that things are being done. Extortion is a very normal thing where an inmate might come in and maybe from a affluent family or a rich family, and people pull at him and they call their families, and monies are transferred from point A to point B, and we are none the wiser. It could happen. And to respond to Senator Richards, the main focus on communication in prison is the cell phone. That's why.
With that said, Mr. Pulchan, is Wi-Fi available in the prison, or has that been blocked?
No. Wi-Fi, we don't provide Wi-Fi, sir.
Mr. Chair,
is Wi-Fi accessible in the prison?
So I feel that's a trick question.
No, it's not a trick question.
However, there are some devices that we found that have data on it.
So Wi-Fi is accessible behind prison walls.
Mr. Chair, let me just ask this question, because I remember a particular debate taking place in the Senate, and I think it was Senator Richards at the time indicating that Wi-Fi and the way it is now, you can park up close to the prison with a device that would allow access to Wi-Fi in the prisons. But that's not the question I want to ask. The question I want to ask is, why are we still talking about cell phone communication in the prisons when it was a year ago, at least I know for sure, in the 11th Parliament, we treated with this by way of cell phone jammers. So let me ask the question, are the jammers working in the prisons at all?
And to answer your question, sir, the jammers are the sole responsibility of another agency that the prison have no control over. I would love the day that the prison can control their jammers. If only legislation can be put in place to allow that to happen, we will have much more control and a lot more can be done.
All right, so it is becoming clear, Mr. Pulchan. 1 second, please, Mr. Scotland. It is becoming clearer to this committee that because we've seen parties in cells out here on Facebook, so Mr. Richards' implication is that it is accessible. As whether you are aware of it or not, he's asking, And what is being done to curtail it from a technological standpoint, which is the point that Mr. De Freitas was raising. However, wasn't there some serious, because look, prisoners all over the world want to, have to, should be able to communicate with their families at points. Isn't that a clear understanding?
Yes, sir.
And let me ask you, before I allow my other colleagues to come in again, what arrangements does the prison service have in place to allow persons to legitimately communicate with their families from time to time? What arrangements do we have in place?
So we have a normal visit protocol that takes place where a remanded inmate is allowed a 50 minutes visit twice per week. Let me also say we have a a phone system in prison where an inmate can be given an ID number where monies can be deposited in that account and he can call his families.
Or you have a phone bank. You have a phone bank.
We do so. In addition to that, what we
Yeah.
also have is we have created systems in every station where an inmate can do Zoom with their family members at home and see them. That was done for the COVID period to maintain family unity.
Okay. And let me ask you one more. This phone system, you have this phone bank to permit them to call. Is it widely and effectively used by the inmates?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes, sir. It's in almost every station. There's our 2 handset in every station. It is not as vast as we would love to have it because it means that people have to now make an appointment when they can make their calls. So we are looking to increase that system in the future to give access to this phone. Of course, all these calls are monitored.
Well, yes. I mean, if a prisoner doesn't have anything to hide, he wants to speak to his wife or his girlfriend or his daughter, there's no problem. He talks.
No problem with that, sir.
The problem are the presence of illegal units in the compound and other access.
Yeah.
Yes. Members, the floor is open to you. Mr. Scotland. Mr. Scotland.
Chairman, I want to ask the prisons. We had an issue where there was a fight in the prison involving prison officers. And Chairman, we were not as successful as we ought to have been because the cameras in the prisons, which was the live contemporaneous evidence, was not working. And the judge took a dim view of our case because of that. Are the cameras, Mr. Commissioner, you know of that matter? Commissioner?
Officers fight in the prison.
You know of that matter? Pardon me?
I have no knowledge of any officers fighting in my prison, sir.
No. It was a matter with inmates and police and prison officers. It is now on appeal. Commissioner, you don't know the matters that are before your prison?
I cannot comment on that, sir. That is a matter for the courts.
It's no evidence on appeal. There's no evidence. It's either the judge was correct or wrong. My question to you is, are those cameras now functional? In other words, if something is happening in the prison, can we go and say, let us review the footage to see exactly what went on? Don't go on the defensive, Commissioner. You are not under attack.
Mr. Scotland, let me just say that right now, there's an upgrade taking place in the prison service with cameras. There was a shutdown in cameras for a while because the supplier, the service provider, could not come into the country to complete the job. So this has been down for a while during the COVID. Not all our cameras are where they want to be, where we want them to be. There are some stations that still do not have cameras. So that's a work in progress. And it's a PSIP project that we intend to bring to the fort very, very soon to have the whole entire prison with cameras so we can have easily monitoring.
Let me direct a question. Thank you. Let me direct a question to the Ministry of National Security's PRTU representative. What's your name again, sir? It's Mr. Alexander?
That's right, Walter Alexander.
Mr. Alexander, good afternoon again.
Good afternoon, sir.
What would you say are the top 10 priorities for you now in respect of the penal transformation project? What are your top 10 priorities or initiatives in respect of moving from the retributive system to the restorative justice system? What can the public hear from you as your top line priorities or initiatives along that wonderful and noble path?
The most important priority initiative that we have is to improve the restorative capacity of the criminal justice agency, because the whole idea behind the Penal Reform and Transformation Unit is to integrate the criminal justice system. Because what we have is that everybody is doing things on piecemeal or basically in silos. So one of the most important things that the Penal Reform and Transformation Unit wants to do is to integrate the criminal justice system. But over the years, that has been difficult because agencies have not been able to speak to each other. So we have plans in place for that. And quite recently, only on Wednesday, we have a situation where we would have all the criminal justice agencies like the police and the prison service be able to share information. That is something that we did recently a few years ago. There was an establishment of something called NOMIS, but that's been shelved, and now we have something where we would have capacity sharing between the different agencies. And most importantly, also, we want to continue to work closely with the prison service to establish more programs, because most of the programs that we have in the prison service is to change the minds of the inmates, the cognitive development. So the programs would be developed, not only skills programs, but also programs that will change their minds of the inmates. Because if you only give them skills programs, they'll be basically a better, for want of a better word, a better criminal. We want to change their minds. So when they come out, they would not return to the...
And what are some of the initiatives you are applying now, deploying to achieve that objective? What are some of the actual initiatives? What are the programs you have on the job right now at work to achieving that objective, improving the minds of the prisoners? What is happening?
Well, we have been continuing to partner with the prison service to have cognitive development programs in the prison service.
Give us some examples. Give us some examples.
Thinking for a change, where we would provide monies, because we have a small budget. Back in the day, our budget was huge, but because of restrictions and things like that, our budget has drastically reduced. So the limited budget that we have, limited money that we have, we try to challenge that to the prison service, so we could have programs to assist the inmates where that is concerned. So earlier, I would have stated that right now we're trying to have a gym in the women's prison. So in terms of helping the inmates, not only in terms of wellness, mental health and wellness, but also help them to get a skill. So when they go outside, they'll be able to work as physical instructors. So we are moving along those lines.
Let me ask you one more before I allow my colleagues to come back in. Mr. Alexander, what would you say is the impact of because you spoke about the integration of the criminal justice system. As far as the policy is concerned, the prison is a part of that.
Yes.
At the end, and then rehabilitation and re-entry. I want to hear what some of the programs you have for rehabilitation and re-entry. I want to hear some of them. I want the public to hear what you are actually doing in terms of rehabilitation and re-entry for the inmates. I also want to know, to what extent does the backlogging in the court system affect what you have to do inside of the prison as it relates to the integrating of both? You with me?
Yes, I am.
Please.
in terms of the programs that what we're doing is that we are an agency that assists the prison service. So we assist the prison service with resources. So we would get programs. Previous years, we would source programs from international agencies. So we would, for example, we would partner with agencies in the United States of America to bring certain programs. So, for example, one program that we brought a few years ago was Thinking for Change and motivational interviewing. So those are the things that we would have spent most of our monies on, but most of our monies, as I said earlier, goes to the prison service, and they're the what we would call the implementation agency.
Okay, members, Mr. De Freitas, Madam Lakshmidial, Dr. Monilal, any further questions?
Mr. Chair, I think Senator Lakshmidial has a hand up for a while, so I'll let her go first.
Thank you very kindly. Madam Lakshmidial.
Chair, the Commissioner of Prisons, could you provide us with, you mentioned that the cameras, there was an issue with getting them working because the service provider couldn't enter the country. Could you give us an update on the status of them in terms of how many are now working and whether or not the service provider has in fact come into the country and addressed the concerns that you had with those cameras being used? I think that the point raised by Member Scotland about litigation before the court actually falling apart because of the absence of cameras is very concerning. So I'd like to get an update on that, please.
Okay, Senator Lakshmidial, let me just say, with respect to the cameras, I would like to submit a written report to you so I can give you accurate information.
Certainly. You're welcome.
What is the second question? The service provider.
For the time being, the public, Mr. Pulchan, for the time being, the public wants to know, since we are hearing about cameras, there are obviously cameras situated at several places inside of prison.
And that is true, sir.
I got the impression from Mr. Scotland's question that in at least one case, and I don't want us to get into the specifics, a particular camera was dysfunctional. So it means that the intention was there to be an eye, but the eye was blinded or closed. Yeah?
That is quite true, sir. That is quite true.
Right. So what we are interested to know is where you have cameras in the prison, we want to know that they are functional so that they're meeting the purpose for which the expenditure was put. And that's the information Madam Jayanti Lakshmidial wants.
So ma'am, let me just rephrase. The service providers from a company named Variant, they are coming in from the USA. I understand the PS was very responsible in organizing a work permit and travel arrangement, approvals for them. And that document was sent to the service provider, and we're expecting them to arrive in the country on the 18th of this month. That will be Thursday, I think. And work will progress because that is for the MSP area. There are other work going on and maintenance work going on in the other prisons where we have cameras situated by our internal IT technicians. So it's really an ongoing work. It's unfortunate that in Mr. Scotland case, that particular camera was off, but it's a work in progress where we are trying to bring back the entire prison system online.
Mr. Pulchan,
so,
there was a time, and I'm aware of this, as Mr. Scotland pointed out, by virtue of my post, my previous association with the Ministry of National Security, you have major buildings, at least one major administrative building inside of the prison that was built exclusively by officers and inmates. Am I correct?
At the Port of Spain prison?
No, at the Aruca prison. The administrative building.
Yes, sir, that is quite true.
Was not that built by inmates and officers?
By inmates and officers, sir.
And there was a live program of teaching the inmates skills, and that was a gift to give them practical experience so that when they re-enter the society, they could be income earning, useful, contributory citizens. Am I correct?
So, and that program is still ongoing.
It's still ongoing.
Still ongoing. We have
Tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. We have construction program going on in prison. Prison is maintained by the inmates of the prison. So the maintenance of the ground, the building construction, the plumbing, the welding, the auto mechanics repair, all these are done.
Agriculture. Do you still produce your own meat, your own chicken?
Yes, sir. We are, well, own pigs, and we taught a variety of skill in the prison and invest these skills in the inmate with a view that they have a skill set when they reach on the outside to continue. We have taught every single skill in the prison service that the prison needs to maintain themselves. Even cooking of food, where meals were up to 3,000 meals are prepared daily for inmates. Bread, the bakery. So if you will remember, the prison make one of the greatest bread ever.
Not only that, when I was last there, if I may just say to my colleagues, the prisoners complained that they were getting white bread for 40 years and they were fed up. They didn't like it. And Chinook Bakery, who taught them to make other types of bread and whole wheat bread, is that still on the agenda, or has that disappeared?
It is still an ongoing program, sir. As a new crop of inmates come into the prison, these skills, they are taught these skills. And with the expectation that they leave here more skilled and with marketable skills that they can generate employment when they go outside or get the job when they go outside.
We are approaching 5 p.m. and I propose to close off at that time. So my final question to you, Mr. Pulchan, in respect of the activities of the prison, would you say that we are, you spoke about 65% of the inmates are remand inmates.
Yes, sir.
About 65% of your population are remand inmates.
Correct.
Do you direct these programs to the remand section or only your convicted inmates?
We direct a portion of the program to the remand inmates. We do not direct trade and other programs that will take them out of that environment. We use educational programs, spiritual program, counseling, anger management. These are the sort of programs we bring into the remand area with a view of sharing knowledge, because it's not really training as such, but it's about sharing knowledge, because it's still maintained that they are innocent.
The prison promised, well, the prison boasted of producing a certain Wayne Chance, now deceased, may his soul rest in peace. He told this world, the country and the world, that his time in the prison gave him an opportunity, having rehabilitated himself, to find spiritual awareness. And you mentioned vision on mission today.
Yes,
on a score of 10, out of 10, would you say 10 inmates leaving your system? Do we have more Wayne chances or less chances? That's my layman's way of asking you. How effective are your programs? Is he an exception, or would you say the majority of your inmates who would have left would have come out like Wayne Chance and the many others who have, as distinct from continuing in a life of antisocial and criminal conduct?
So Mr. Wayne Chance is an exceptional individual. I have had the opportunity as a junior officer to work with him and supervise him as a junior officer, growing up on the lines. Very exceptional human being. And we have many more like him. We have had about 5 or 6 that I could remember come back to the prison and give back. Brother Barker is one of them. Just a name I just remember, top of my head. And there's quite a few others. I would say about 30% of the inmates who pass through our system, roughly 30%, are not repeaters.
The figure of 60% recidivism rate, that existed 10, 12 years ago? Where is it now in terms of repeat offenders based on the programs you offer in there? What is it like now? Still like 60%? Or it has gone down?
I think we about 64% at this point in time, sir.
Recidivism?
Recidivism, because what is happening? What is happening? A lot of inmates come into the system, and sometimes they come in more than one warrant. So if they get bail and in this warrant, they have 5 more others waiting for them because of the life of crime. And I'm not speaking of convicted, I'm speaking mainly of the remanded inmates. We have remanded inmates with up to 10 warrants. So sometimes they get bail on a warrant and they leave and they get held on another warrant and come back inside. All this is part of the revolving system.
All right. Members?
Mr. Chair, 1 second. Let me just understand that. So you're saying that there are 10 warrants. So at the time of the 1 warrant that landed them in remand, are the other 9 warrants not outstanding?
So sometimes,
like, why are they leaving to then be picked up on another warrant if they have 10 warrants outstanding? That's just what I understood from what you were just saying.
Sure. Senator Debaters, let me just clear that. An inmate might, an offender might commit offenses in various district courts district. So you find that a police in Sandy Grande might have a warrant, and a police in Caranage may have a warrant. But the police in Grande and Caranage may not know that until they find the person back in their jurisdiction. And this is one of the realities that actually happen.
So this is exactly why I asked the question. So are you telling me that a person with a warrant in Sandy Grande and a person with a warrant in Caranage coming into a prison system, right, that the prison system or the judicial system doesn't know how many warrants one person has, no matter where the act was committed in Trinidad and Tobago?
This is what the evidence we are still suggesting, sir.
Yes. However, remember the police are improving their own technology, and it is now being linked with the magistrates and court and so on. And the police has now what is called a Versadex system, where they can look, the police in Caranage can see what's happening with any individual once he's properly identified. But of course, that is a work in progress. And of course, there'll be some cracks that 1 or 2 would fall through. But yes, I am aware that what Mr. Pursuant has said does exist, but I expect that should be becoming more rare as the months go on. All right, thank you very kindly. Any member, Madam Jaya?
Chairman, just one quick question to the Commissioner of Police. Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Pursuant, can you give us a sense of how prevalent is drug trafficking or drug movement through the prison? My understanding is that marijuana is quite prevalent in the prison, and sometimes it's allowed to be prevalent to keep people's heads cool, in parentheses.
And are they permitted 30 grams?
So,
are they permitted 30 grams? I'm just asking so the public can understand.
Absolutely no. No 30 grams. Marijuana, drugs, as far as I know, marijuana on the whole is still illegal in the prison service. I know there are several people outside who are advocating for plantation of marijuana in prison. This is not going to happen. There are searches every day, and every single day, I can tell you, marijuana is found. The walls at the Golden Grove prison are so porous that it is a 7 feet chain link fence wire that we are trying to rebuild very soon with a contract from the government. We're expecting to go up with a big wire wall. People pass and through.
So you're telling me every day, because if every day marijuana is found, it means that every day people are throwing marijuana over the fence? Every day?
Not only
that's what he's suggesting?
People, sir, not only people. It reached a stage now where drones are seen over the prison. Drones. We have actually caught a drone and processed it and sent it to the right agency.
And what is it? And what was attached to this drone?
Well, a package of marijuana, sir, and other contraband, including cell phones.
And is marijuana the only drug being found in the prison, finally?
It is 90% of the drugs found in prison really is marijuana. I think.
And is there a marijuana trade in the prison as part of the contraband economic system in the prison?
Yeah, there's a niche trade, because at the end of the day, there are a lot of inmates coming to prison who would have used marijuana outside and choose to continue it inside.
So marijuana is business in the prison?
It's a business. It's where the money are.
Thank you, sir.
Just one last thing. I know.
Yes, Member Lakshmi Dial.
Commissioner, from 2:30 to now, we seem to have moved from my initial question of contraband and the officers facilitating. We've moved from a situation where I took it to mean that we had the situation under control with the scanning and so on, to now hearing that, I mean, it really is that we have a thriving contraband trade in the prison, and that this is certainly contributing to the proliferation of the gangs. So, I mean, I understand what you're saying now. Well, cell phones are too big to be brought in the way they used to be. Cigarettes and so on are still coming in. But it seems to me that the prison authorities need to find new ways to deal with the infiltration of contraband. Otherwise, the proliferation of gangs will continue, whether it's drones, defense, whatever it is. There seems to still be, and I cannot comprehend that all of this is happening with defense and the drone and all of that without some sort of participation or acquiescence from your officers. Have you found any evidence of that, a participation of your officers turning on, even if it's so much as just looking the other way when the drone flies in with the marijuana and the phone attached to it? I can't imagine that in a prison something like that could happen without being detected so easily. Commissioner,
your answer.
So, my answer to that, there are corrupted officers in the prison service. I will not say that all my officers are above board. There are those who are operating clandestine activities. We are trying our best to weed them out. Under my commissionership since last year to now, we have had about 10 officers before the courts because of their involvement in illegal contraband trade.
Well, in fairness to the prison environment in Trinidad and Tobago, those of us who are aware, those of us who watch at our televisions will understand that this question is not unique to Trinidad and Tobago, but certainly Member Jayanti Lal is on behalf of us saying we can and we should be doing a whole lot better, because it cannot be the case that somebody comes into the prison and leaves the prison as a cocaine addict, or leave the prison as some other kind of addict, or leave the prison as a gang member, and we sit by and not do it. You all are the ones who stand between the prisoners and the rest of us in the society, in the free world as they call it. And we look forward to your work in order to protect the young men who come into your hand and to ensure that they are better human beings on their departure as they re-enter the society. That's your mandate, isn't it? All right, in which case, it now being just about 5 p.m., I would like to, subject to any final question or comment on the part of the members of this committee, bring this public hearing to an end. Members, Chairman, final position.
Chairman,
Mr. Scotland.
With your leave, and this is on, and hopefully on a more positive note. This is for national security and prison. What is being done to prepare persons on long-term sentences for life skills when they come out? You know, life in 2021 is not life as it was even in 2019. What life skills are being taught? What synergies between national security and the prison system is being put in place to teach persons that way of coping? That's my final question, Chair.
Thank you.
Mr. Scotland, good afternoon once again. We have a variety of trades. Just to piggyback on the question before, where we have those inmates, especially those with long term, where you spoke about the restorative justice practices. We have, for example, the sycamore tree foundation, that pilot project that ran with offenders, and of course, not the same victims, but other victims where they have the opportunity. So what we do is prepare your mind. And then we go to the social skills, where they engage in programs throughout their sentences. And we have a 4-year confidential done on all the long-term inmates, where we are constantly monitoring and evaluating them throughout their sentences. They are also involved in all the trades, tailoring, upholstery, auto mechanics, auto electrical, tire repairs, agriculture, which is our mainstay, and we see it going forward as our mainstay, where we involve programs from basic. We have at Carrera Convict Prison, we have the hydroponics. We also have the aquaponics. We have agriculture, and this is one of our mainstays. All inmates have the ability to be part of this project. And the long-term inmates especially, they have more access because of the time they spend to be involved in this program. We even use a couple of those inmates to go out to the schools when we had the I Support Our Services program, where we would have gone to schools and they give their life experiences and how it would have affected them. It gives them the opportunity to free their soul and also to give back. And not only give back to society, but help a youth like them to grow and make choices that are wiser than they would have made. So yes, they are involved in all of the programs that are available within the prison service.
Thank you very kindly. Well, Ministry of National Security, I invite you to make a very short closing commentary, followed by the Commissioner of Prison, and then we bring this aspect to a quick end.
Thank you, Chair. As the PS of the Ministry of National Security, I wish to thank the committee for the invitation this afternoon. It presented us with an opportunity to share strategies and programs presently being undertaken by the MNS and the TT Prison Service. It is hoped that we would have assisted the committee in providing clarity to some of the various issues raised. We know that several factors contribute to crime, such as social, environmental, and economic, and the MNS cannot solve it alone. Whilst from the MNS perspective, we are looking at the whole of government approach, I think we need to look at it from a societal perspective in terms of whole of society approach. It cannot be that the ministry or the prison service is trying to wing it alone. This is an issue that reverberates throughout the entire country, and it takes the effort of all to solve it. Whilst our focus here this evening would have been on treating with a situation or behaviors that would have escalated into the gangs and so forth, I think we need to pay particular attention at getting to the root cause, which in my mind goes right back to the starting point, the base, and that is the family. And I think we need to pay a lot of attention in getting it right at that level so that we don't have to deal with it when it escalates to this point with gang members and gangs and so forth. So I just want to make a pitch, Chair, that we are all in this together and we need to do it as a society, not just one sector. So I hope that we would have provided the support to the committee in doing its work, and we will, based on the commitment that we provided this afternoon, we will provide all the outstanding information. Thank you, Chair and members of the committee.
Thank you very much. Mr. Commissioner.
So, I want to say thanks to the committee and the chair and the committee members for the interrogative questioning that allowed a lot of information to come out here today. I hope that the information that came out from the questioning will lead to the good of the country as a whole. I want to say the Trinidad and Tobago Prison Service is a noble organization, sir. And my officers challenge themselves daily as frontline officers, frontline heroes in managing an organization that is challenged a bit with forces against it. I have had instances where my officers died for just doing their job. And you know what? The next day, I had no sick leave. They came back out to work. So it's an organization that keeps on giving, and we do our best. So, and we will continue to do our best. So I want to thank you very much.
Chairman, if I could, I just want to thank Mr. Pulchan and his officers for work that is often undervalued in society.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. And I endorse that. This committee endorses that. And therefore, with that said, Mr. Richards, Senator Richards, speaking on behalf of all of us, respecting, appreciating, and thanking you, Mr. Pulchan, and your officers, men and women, for the work you have been doing, and at the same time urging you to step it up and improve it and do even more and do it even better for the benefit of the society as you have described it. So I would like to, in those circumstances, thank you all, wish you safe passage back to your respective workstations, and to bring this public hearing to an end. Thank you very much. Bye.
Members, please don't leave us yet.
No, madam. No, madam. Secretary, we will not. Thank you.